Hello. Thanks for joining us here on our astrology versus psychology episode. Number, I don't know, 5, I think this is. I haven't been keeping track. But we are taking a look today at depression as seen through an astrological lens, and then what the DSM-5 has to say about it, and what we can both learn from each other and maybe help, get people out of a funk, or at least understand what might be going on another level. So, and I'm joined here today by Angela Yuriko Smith. She's waving, but didn't say it, so the camera didn't go.
Hi.
And then Linda Blackshaw from Australia. So we've got Australia, Brazil, and the United States being represented here for this discussion. So, full disclosure, I have depression as a diagnosis. And so I'm very familiar with this energy and how to work with it and the pitfalls thereof. What I've identified it as, like, the main culprit in this is what I would say would be Saturn in astrology. And Saturn, I say, is the planet of no fun for you. So Saturn is father time, right? It's very authoritative energy. It's rules, order, structure, discipline. It's a very necessary energy to give all of those things to society, but it can be very rigid and things have to be done in this way, and it can be a very demanding energy to have. And so when you have it prominently somewhere in your chart, especially with the moon, as we'll see, so moon is your emotional state. So anything going on with that, that can lead a heaviness to it will depress it. So you take this very large planet of Saturn, being like, no, things have to be just so, and you have the moon, which doesn't necessarily like to be boxed in either. Like, it's our emotions, they go where they go, right? They need to be able to flow freely. And Saturn likes to kind of build levees, for that. So when paired with something like the moon, you'll see kind of that depressing effect of I need to be doing more. Like, it can be a very much, depression on the whole. There's this feeling like I haven't maybe done enough, and just the expectations being set on you. And so that's where that feeling can come in of being overwhelmed. I didn't do things to this degree, and now I'm feeling sad about it. That's been my experience with it anyway. It tends to be, or it can come from this place of, like, depression itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It tells us, like, the whole reason for it is to tell us that something is not right in our environment and that we need to change it, right? And so what can come in with the Saturn energy on there is this feeling like you can't change it. So Saturn is also control energy. So it can be this feeling that outside forces are controlling your environment and thus your emotions. Moon is also the home. So it can feel like I'm constricted, I'm restricted, and I don't want to be. So in the wild, depression isn't something that we're supposed to stay in. It's supposed to indicate there's something wrong in this environment. We need to move out of it and go somewhere where there's food or where the weather is better or whatever. In our modern society, we tend to not be able to do that as easily, right? You'll get stuck in a job that you don't like, or maybe you're in a family situation that's not ideal. And so in my own experience, I was diagnosed with reoccurring depression, which I now look at and I'm like, yeah, I reoccurringly get stuck in situations that suck. But understanding this control aspect of it can help you understand that you do have control. So you have control over how you think about a given situation, right? Even if you can't physically get out of a situation, say you're literally in prison, you can control how you're looking at that situation. Okay, I'm here, what can I do to control my environment? And that may be as much as, writing a book. Like, you can't go anywhere, go somewhere in your imagination, right? So in that aspect, it can be good. You can start giving people with depression these tools and showing them how they can control their situation to get out of it, that they are the ones in control of their lives. The emperor energy from the tarot, right? It's I am in control, and letting them see that in ways that maybe, some authority figure in their life hasn't allowed them to, you know. So it also can be, there's an energy of destiny called Rahu, or the North Node, which when paired with the moon can also give this, because it's like, oh, I need to be doing more heading towards that destiny that I'm doing. And so it just feels like this never-ending Sisyphean wheel of unattainable perfection in some cases. And Saturn energy is also very much centered in reality. It doesn't allow you to escape as easily. It's like, no, you're going to look at this, even if you want to be, tinkering off over here or there. It's harder to. So those are the major ones. Anything really that suppresses the moon can cause this to one degree or another. Also, I've seen it when it's really close with the ascendant. People get really hard on themselves. I think that they have to climb that mountain, and if they don't reach that mountaintop in X time, or they're not keeping up with the Joneses or whatever, it can cause that depression. Like, I should be doing more, I should be better. And on the one hand, it's to drive you to learn more, to do more, to take that next step. But it's no good if it gets you so overwhelmed. You take on so much trying to get up that mountain that you end up burning out and then crashing into the depression, So does that make sense? Any questions? All right. Well, we will jump over here to what the DSM-5 has to say about it, that you need 5 or more of these symptoms being present during the same 2-week period. At least one of the symptoms is either depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. So depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by either subjective report, feels sad, empty, or hopeless, or observation made by others. Appears tearful. That's interesting. In children and adolescents, this can be irritable mood. So they do make allowances for those fluctuating hormones, right? It's not being like, okay, you're diagnosed. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. So again, that can be like, there can be this feeling of I can't do it to the nth degree, so why bother, right? Everything I try fails my plans, because that's Saturn too. The plans that I've done haven't gone how I wanted to. So in some ways that controlling can be used against you, right?
Yeah, they can't be perfect. It's not going to happen at all.
Exactly. So things like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good can help with people, learning to navigate this a little bit and changing their mindset on it. Again, what I can control. Insomnia or hyperinsomnia, nearly every day. Yeah, like when your mind is always going and always planning, it's hard to shut it off, right? So it's gonna cause sleep problems. Saturn also, like in a broader spiritual sense, is the planet of karma. So any little slight, any little thing that we've done can kind of haunt us, you know, and that can keep people up. That should be said. That's what I say. It's no fun for you. It's Captain Buzzkill. That's what I call Saturn. All right. Psychomotor agitation or retardation nearly every day. Subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. So Saturn, I talked about this in a previous episode about Saturn being the brake to Mars's gas pedal. So yeah, it's that restrictive element. So here I would imagine you'd see this more with Saturn on the ascendant, the physical self. People feeling like they're literally weighed down, you know. And anybody who suffered depression knows that. It can literally feel like that the weight of the world is on you. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. Yeah, it takes a lot to be thinking these things constantly. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, which may be delusional. You know, it's that feeling of I should be doing more. So Rahu, or that North Node in particular, can do this to the degree where like other people will think that you're doing a million things and that you're so hyper productive, but to you, because the way this energy is, you don't see it unless you learn to work with it. And there are different ways to go about that in astrology and psychology, you know, to kind of calm those voices back in your head and be like, well, where does this come from? And is this true? You know, stop. Is it true, or is this a projection? You know, the catastrophic thinking exercises come to mind. You know, and oftentimes when you just stop and give it that moment, and Saturn rules that being here and now in the moment, in the present. You know, it can be like, oh, of course, that's ridiculous. You know, objectively, that's ridiculous. Okay, maybe I can calm myself a little bit. The feelings of, I already did that one. Diminished ability to think or concentrate or indecisiveness nearly every day. So yeah, just there can be this undercutting that happens. Like if I'm, especially if it's coming from an energy of having somebody who's controlling in your environment, telling you that you can't do things right. You can get that in your head, like, well, I can't do it right anyway, or I didn't do it to these specifications before, so I'm not going to bother. You know, instead of being like, well, I'm my own authority, who are they? You know, so oftentimes this energy, as we get older, Saturn is the planet of maturation. We grow into that more and realize we are our own authority. And so depression can ease up in time as you step into that aspect of it. So recurrent thoughts of death. Saturn also rules death, by the way. Pluto and Saturn, both. So it's just that mortality. It's father time, right? The clock is ticking. So that can be depressing in and of itself. I don't have enough time, or, you know, I'm getting too old, or my joints are popping. Oh no, you know, it's the end of the world. So just, you know, that to be mindful of recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, mind you, or suicide attempts, or a specific plan for committing suicide. So I don't know why they distinguish here, but with or without a plan. And that's, you know, Saturn is also planning. So it's like, well, it only makes sense. Like to me, I always understood why people would want to take the suicidal route, because if you're in so much pain all day, every day, so much being hard on yourself or in a bad situation or whatever, starts to be a very logical choice to somebody in that situation. Even though there may be other ways out that they can't see in the moment, and that's very true. But to just dismiss it, it's like, well, everybody's got this threshold somewhere, you know. It's just a matter of what it is. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions or anything to add?
The one thing I'll add is with regards to the suicide. I watched a documentary, and they were actually talking to people who had been saved. It had failed, and every single one of them said, and they were all different ages, men and women, and many of them said that they didn't actually want to die. They just wanted the pain to stop.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, you know, because I mean, so often, you know, you hear people talking about, you know, how they think, oh, somebody killed themselves, they're cowards, and they're not. It's just that they've just reached the end of their rope. No one can say to them, you know, hang on, you can get through it, because the pain's just overwhelmed them. And it's interesting to see that maybe if you combine the astrology earlier or at all, that there might have been, okay, you know, this is, try this sort of thing. Because quite often I used to read tarot cards, and quite often people would come and I'd say, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? They're not going to cost you anything. They may work. And they actually went away feeling better because I empowered them to do something for themselves. And I think that's, I mean, so this is very interesting. And I'm actually thinking how I can use some of these in my writing. So that's, yeah, which is really, really good.
Yeah, it speaks to that, giving them the tools so then they're in control of their situation, right? One way that I got out of a recent bout of depression, and understandably so, I had like objectively a lot of stuff go very, very wrong in my life. And so nobody would fault me at all for being depressed. But I was like, you know what? I just don't want to be here anymore. Like, I don't want to, not here in physically, I don't want to be dwelling in this emotion anymore. I'm sick of it. Had enough.
Yeah. That's it.
You know.
And yeah, well, I was going through a terrible bout of not sleeping, and the more I worried about not sleeping, the more I didn't sleep. So now I just accept that some nights I'm not going to sleep very much, and if I actually get 5 or 6 straight hours, I raise the flags, because I couldn't do anything about it. I can't take sleeping tablets, so I've got to accept it. And now if I can't sleep, I mean, I'm lucky enough that if I get a chance, I can have a nap during the day if I need it. But it's like just making that decision. I've got insomnia. It comes and goes, fine. And that's, you know, and I think that sometimes, although being depressed, and I'm sure you get this all the time, is cheer up. And I always felt like grabbing somebody by the throat and saying, don't you think if I could cheer up, I'd fucking do it? You know, it's like.
Well, yeah, and that goes to what I just said. So it kind of piggybacks off that. You can, because it is a choice to fight against it. And it's not saying that it isn't everything in that moment or that it's your fault or whatnot, but we do have the power to decide, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to change my mindset, do what I can, you know, whether it's, you know, being thankful for the air in your lungs in that moment, you know, the little things. That's what I'm talking about being able to pull yourself out of it, you know. And that's a choice. No, just cheer up and snap.
Yeah.
It's so easy, right? It's not. And so oftentimes there'll be a lot more to it, or things that you have to go through and unpack to feel like you have more control over your life. It can be an entire spiritual journey. But at the end of the day, this energy is saying you are in control of your life. And if you're feeling depressed, it's because you aren't feeling that in control, you know. So how then do we get you to that point, you know? And even me making this decision, it's not that I have all happy good days, you know. by any means. It's not like a switch gets flipped, but it's that choice of being almost mad. Like, I've been here enough. Or like giving somebody else or some other situation the control over you can be another way to look at this, right? So you're working within that energy of Saturn and being like, oh, no. You don't get control over me. I have control over me. Do you see what I mean? My reality. And then you get into delusions, and is that schizophrenia? Because you're deciding to look on the bright side of life, you know? I don't know. But it's just it's reframing it, right? And this can take time and you know isn't always easy, but I have recently looked at that a little differently, the cheer up. Cheer up. Like, but yeah, I guess you can, but it's complicated. And most people just kind of mean at surface level.
Yeah.
I think you can, but it takes a lot of LSD or ayahuasca to do that.
I have definitely gone to the dark night of the soul and back again quite a few times. Okay.
Yeah. I find it like something Linda said, the metaphor, you're at the end of your rope, and so there's nothing left to hang on to. But that is like literally, it's like you're at the end of your rope. What are you going to hang on to? There's nothing left,
Nothing.
So that's why we say that, and yet we still just kind of blandly, that's literally what the metaphor means.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Letting go is that letting go of control. Some people say give it to God. Let them be who they are. Let them, or just don't let it depress you. Don't let the whatever that is get you down in it.
But sometimes in the letting go, even if it's only temporary, right? You say, I'm going to shove it over here. It gives you that breathing space to come and back and look at it with fresher eyes. And sometimes you just need that breathing space. You go, that's a too hard basket. I'm shoving that over there, or I'm giving it to God, or whatever your belief system is. I think it can give you a breathing space, but it's not the full. I mean, as you're talking, it's obviously not the full picture.
Oh no.
So it's really fascinating. I'm going to put it off. I don't know. I don't think you can hear him. My grandson's having a shower before he goes to school, and he's in there singing.
Oh no, I can't hear him. But singing is great. Singing, dancing.
He's having the time of his life.
I wish we could hear him. That would be awesome.
Because that's the remedy to this, hard, oppressive Saturnian energy, to dance, to be a kid again, to do those things that are fun, right? To bring that energy in. Whenever you can do it.
But I'm going to have to go in there and mop up that water, because now he's splashing.
See?
He's having the best time. Luckily, my daughter's home today, so she can deal with him.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hop over here. This is Katy Perry's chart. And here's Saturn. And here's her moon. And she's said to have depression, believe it or not, as bubbly as she is, right? I was a little surprised at that. But I guess it shouldn't surprise me too much, because I tend to the same thing. It's like, can't rain all the time, But she's a perfect example here. Literally 17 degrees and 17 degrees are right on there. So she's very harsh on herself, very much a perfectionist. And always thinking. So we see that Mercury with her ascendant there too, always thinking. It's the catastrophic thinking of what could go wrong. Well, you flip that into what could go right. So if the energy's there one way or the other, and it's all a spectrum in astrology. It's high and low. And oftentimes we do this during our lives, hopefully we go up over time. But you might have times when you're up and you go way down and back up again. So So she is 1, and she's lots of Scorpio too. So just for the record, lots of depth there. And then Kirsten Dunst. Let's see, she's got her, what was this one? So her moon is in her first house here. And oh, she was one where I was looking at her moon and her sun. That's what it was. So I didn't talk about this too much because it isn't something that I've come across as often as being a culprit, but it can be because the sun is also an authority figure. So the sun is like where Saturn can be like the father figure in somebody's life, depressing somebody down. This one can also be that, but it can also be like ourselves getting ourselves down. And so here she's got like a square, so this red line from her moon to her sun. And so that's they're constantly kind of at odds with each other. And for mind, body, soul, then you have the soul and the mind constantly fighting. And this can get exhausting. And one is trying to overrule the other, instead of working together. So that's why I brought her up. And I like Kirsten Dunst. So that's it. It's not always Saturn. But and here too we have Lady Gaga, who she's got moon with Pluto. So that's also like a harder, harsher energy with the moon in this case. Can be very controlling and domineering as well. Very dark. And she just played Harley Quinn, right? So that's that sort of energy. And then she's also got her ascendant across from her Mars, which I talked briefly about Mars being like, it wants to go, go, go. And now it's constricted. You can literally see it almost looks like a bow being pulled back and not allowed to go, And so that can lead to depression because you're being made to be, in one place or feeling like you can't go and just be yourself and express yourself how you want. And I find that very interesting for Lady Gaga. She really bucked that system. She was like, no, I'm not only going to do that, I'm going to be a different person every day, you know. So, and Robin Williams, which a lot of people are like, oh, they wouldn't have ever thought he was depressed. But, come to find out that he very much was. He's got this Rahu energy right with his moon here. So, and interestingly, when he killed himself, I believe it was Saturn, because in transit, oh, there's a spooky guy.
Yeah, I was watching that. He's adorable.
I don't think the audience can see, but Linda, I think her grandson has a nice.
Sorry.
No, I think he distracted me.
So that's why I have the mute on.
I just looked up and I was like, oh.
That's so cute.
Okay, so in transit, so this is the natal chart, but the planets are always somewhere doing something and talking to us. And when Robin Williams killed himself, Saturn was on his ascendant. So Saturn can be very much, this is reality, stark, you're facing, this is your future. And he just was like, nope, not able to deal with it. And I remember watching that and I was like, oh man, and I had just started learning astrology, I think. And I was like, man, if I just could have talked to him because it'll pass. Sometimes we'll get these episodes where, Saturn might be going over your moon or your ascendant or whatever. And it could be a couple of months before it moves on. And in that time period, you're being asked to have a reality check on your life, whether or not you have these aspects natally. It can feel like a bout of depression. And so if you know this is happening and how long it's going to be going on for, it can give you a window to know, okay, I have to get serious, but it won't be forever, So I could have been like, it won't feel this bad forever. There might be ways, but unfortunately. And I know, just as an aside, when I was studying charts, I studied Robin, who's one of the first ones, and I looked at his Inside the Actors Studio interview and kind of compared it to his chart as I was going along. And he said that he got into comedy because of his mother, so Moon. And remember, this Rahu is the destiny, what we're supposed to do in this world. Because he made his mother laugh, and her smile was so precious to him that he wanted to always get that out of her. So he went into comedy. So that's just, I was like, oh, that's exactly what that is, you know? And it's in his 5th house, which the 5th house is fun, comedy, you know, being up on stage. And Pisces is connecting with everybody. So he had that way about him, right? Much beloved. But he hid it very well, you know. We a lot of people didn't know. So yeah, then we get J.K. Rowling, and she's here. She's got Saturn opposing her moon. So that's gonna give that, it's not the conjunction, but it's there. It's enough to bring you down on a regular basis. Here also we see the moon opposing Venus and Mars. So that's, again, that's just feeling restricted, and maybe just a little bit chaotic. So there are different ways that it can manifest with that moon, but Saturn is the big one generally. But I wanted to bring out a couple of different smatterings to show that it's not always just that. So, and there we go. So did you guys have any questions, anything more to add? No?
Well, I don't want to interrupt Linda, so I was kind of like, I'll just wait. Yeah, I would like to see, because it's super interesting, especially when you've gone through it. I had my when I was younger attempts, you know, and it was actually getting pregnant that kind of brought me out of it. But I'd love to see at some point, not right now, I know, because it'd probably be a lot of research. When I started saying that about the ayahuasca, you know, because they are starting to treat depression with hallucinogens, I'm wondering if there's any kind of correlation like that, like in the stars. Like, would somebody be more receptive to it than somebody else? Or, you know, because it's interesting how it all connects.
And kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from Saturn would be Jupiterian energy, which is hope and optimism and escapism into the realm of fantasy. You know, we looked at Jupiter and Neptune energy when we were looking at schizophrenia. You know, that, oh, well, are you spiritual or are you delusional? You know. So yeah, to me that is the antidote, because it's rewriting what your reality is into something that you control. And so that's all spirituality really does at the end of the day. It gives that control either to that higher power that you really trust to have your best interest at heart, or you being that higher power that you trust, you know? So that's what I would say about that. I think anything that can get you more in touch with that sense of self and grounded, which is Saturn too, because Saturn doesn't want you to just sit there and be a husk, unable to move and do anything or be productive. You know, the energy itself is neither good nor bad. It's just we live in a very demanding society on the whole. Right? It's go, do. Got that side thing that you kind of like doing, make money doing it.
Oh yeah, hustle culture.
Yeah, so it's to me, it's like, if you're not depressed in the current situation, there's probably something wrong. That's an answer right there. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this up and stop the recording now. So,
yeah, thanks for doing this. This is super
This is
interesting.
wonderful.
So if you'd like to be part of the radical generosity movement that we spoke of before, you can come to the Authortunities Hub. There'll be a link below. I go live there every Wednesday at 6:30, where we discuss, these sorts of things. And next week will be, I believe I'm going to do anxiety.
Oh,
So I know a lot of people deal with that as well, so maybe we can have some good input there. And I'm doing all of this to promote 11th House Publishing, which is a neuro-subversive radical publishing company that we're a nonprofit just starting up. And we aim to misbehave and change things up, give voices to neurodivergence among us, and change the world for the better.
oh, good.
One go. So that's what the house in astrology is. It's the house of society, it's the internet, it's revolution, it's doing things different and outside the box. So we love that. Opportunities loves that. Angela loves that. Linda loves that. I love that. Comments if you love that. And I will talk to you guys later. You guys want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us.